Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP John Posh, from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the doctor himself. Full disclosure, Dr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey John, doing great. Episode 250. We got there. Some didn't believe in us, but we proved the doubters wrong. Whoever those people were, I don't know. But a very special day also because as we've talked about a number of times before, one of the inspirations for me for the podcast was certainly WrestleNomics, starting out with the old school, of course, Mookie, and of course, the man that's carried on the legacy, Brandon Thurston, is joining us today. And what a day it is because we have some breaking news that is very much in Brandon's wheelhouse. So let me turn it over to you, John.
Brandon, what is going on here? What is the latest with the breaking news? Paramount to bid on WBD. What does this mean for wrestling? And what does this mean that they're bidding? Does that mean that it's a possibility that somebody else is bidding on them as well?
Hello, John and Lavie. It's always great to talk with you. This is the internal question that has been raised time after time, will be raised time after time, indefinitely into the future. What does this mean? I looked at the weather report this morning and I said, what does this mean for AEW?
Yes.
So the latest that I know is that Paramount is not really final, right? They're going to put in a bid to acquire WBD. According to the Wall Street Journal yesterday, they're trying to get ahead of potential bids from very rich and wealthy companies like Apple and Amazon that might bid on it. I see you guys have a tweet here in the notes that I have not read, but that might have new information to me. But I mean, this is something that might happen. If it does, maybe it means something because TKO has a big deal with Paramount for its UFC rights. Maybe that matters. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Kind of crazy that WBD is on the market. No, or should we be expecting that?
You should be expecting that. I think, with these, Skydance just made a deal to get together with Paramount. We're going to see consolidation, right? These are declining assets in the case of WBD, in the case of NBCU. We've seen, I'm not sure what the machinations are, but we've seen both WBD and NBC Universal sort of split off their more promising digital assets from their older traditional cable assets because cable is still profitable, still a profitable, viable business, but it's declining because the number of cable traditional subscribers are declining. And the streaming subscriber monthly charges will increase until morale improves.
To me, it's one of those things where you just say, okay, if they sell one of the assets is AEW, one of the assets, what happens with AEW? Which, of course, like we're just joking around about it, but what would really happen if WBD sells to Paramount? What happens to AEW? Do they continue to operate as normal? Do they own a stake of AEW that would be sold to Paramount? I mean, what happens
certainly.
with AEW?
I think WBD owns a stake that must be less than 10%. We've heard Tony Khan say things in the past like he's open to them owning more, which implies that they already own some, but he's never outright said it, right? They own a piece of it, but AEW is an independently controlled company that has at least one other shareholder, but it's, controlled by the Khan family. If WBD were to merge with Paramount or be acquired by Paramount, it doesn't mean that TBS and TNT are going to go away. Those are still valuable networks. It doesn't mean that HBO Max is certainly not going to go away. That's still going to exist. I think the real question is there any pressure that TKO can apply? Or let's try to keep this legal. Is there any reason why an eventually merged company that involves both Paramount and WBD might be less interested in renewing AEW rights at a favorable rate to AEW? That's the question. I have no idea what the answer is, but I think that's a genuine question if this deal even happens.
How close are we to a deal here?
You would have to ask David Zasloff and Larry Ellison. I don't know.
Are you hearing anything, any rumors where it's like imminent or anything? I know the bid is not going in, but it's one of those things where it's kind of like a done deal before they even get into the room kind of deal, or have you heard any rumors about it?
It would be in WBD's interest to explore all offers, I suppose, including with Apple and Amazon, but I don't know.
Man, what crazy times here in the wrestling business. We're always kind of questioning what's going to happen with WBD and AEW. What makes you think that? Like, I know with Khan's comments, but besides Khan's comments about WBD, what makes you kind of think that they own a part of AEW? Is there anything else out there? Is anything else been said on their end?
No, and there wouldn't be, right? People want to know, well, if WBD owned a piece of AEW, that would be in WBD's SEC filings. No, it wouldn't. WBD is a much, much larger company than AEW. AEW has a great deal of value to it, but on the scale of WBD, it's not something that rises to the level of materiality that would need to be disclosed in a filing like an SEC filing. There's no reason why we would have to know about that, just like we didn't have any disclosures really related to at least the value of Ring of Honor. I think there might have been a note in an SEC filing in Sinclair's filings when they sold it off, but didn't give us any numerical value about what it was worth. I think, it makes sense for WBD to have a vested interest in this wrestling company that without a strong network, this wrestling company could not be successful. So it makes sense to align their interests. And I think you just look at the way that Tony has handled those questions, it all but confirms that they own a piece.
So how much is Ring of Honor, or how much was it worth? How much do you think it's worth now, if anything?
AEW, I don't know. I haven't given that a lot of thought. I think they could be profitable this year. I think Tony has said things to that effect. But I don't have a strong opinion. I haven't given that much thought about what the value is. I know there's articles out there that value it at over $1 billion or something like that. That could be, I don't know.
AEW, man, you're right. But are they profitable, or you can't really say, because Meltzer has kind of went out there and said, "Oh, they're definitely profitable," but are they?
Could be. I mean, could be. I think I wrote things to that effect that they could. It's possible. It's harder for me to estimate their expenses. I think we have more impressions of what their revenues are because we can see WrestleTix data for their ticket sales, but more importantly, we have reports about what the value of their TV deal is. We know what deals they have internationally. We get reports about how they perform on pay-per-view. It's harder to know what their production expenses are or what their talent is. Well, we do have the Harrington Declaration, which said that just over a 2-year period, they spent spent $60 million on talent. So that gives you a decent sense of what their talent cost is. But who knows? I mean, like, I remember Tony in 2020 said that they would have been profitable in that year, the pandemic year, when expenses were lower because they were in a central location. They would have been profitable in that year if not for a video game investment that he made. So there could always be this unknown that's just putting this expense in that results in negative net income. I wish AEW, I hope AEW becomes a publicly traded company someday, but I think Tony was asked that directly, I think by Alex Sherman of CNBC, and he said no. And I can I can see his rationale. Like he just wants to control this company, not be beholden to shareholders, and just have fun with this wrestling project. So I doubt it will be a publicly traded company. Does he need the cash? I think Shad's got enough cash.
Let's say, right, this deal goes down and WBD gets absorbed by Paramount. What happens with HBO Max and the pay-per-views, AEW pay-per-views? Does that change at all? Do you think that model change, or what are we going to see as far as that?
I would think the existing deals will survive and are probably sort of legally bound to survive for the duration, which is it's a 3-year deal starting this year, so through 2028, and maybe if the option gets picked up through 2029. I think they're okay at least through the duration of the current term.
Do you like this pay-per-view deal, where if it's basically $10 off if you have HBO Max, you get the pay-per-view? Do you like that deal? Do you think that's good, or do you think it should be less?
As a consumer,
yeah,
everything should be free, of course. Nothing
right.
should cost me anything.
Right.
It seems like a reasonable deal, though. I mean, it makes sense for AEW content, the live broadcast as well as the library, to be in the same place where you can also buy the pay-per-view. That makes sense. It's probably not great news if you're Fight or if you're Amazon or YouTube or any of their other pay-per-view carriers. Not that this is a huge relationship for you, but why would I as a consumer spend 50 when I can go with the bargain of I have to sign up for HBO, which will cost me at least $10, but I'm spending the same thing anyway, and at least that way I also get access to The Sopranos on HBO Max.
Yeah, it's true. Basically, yeah. So with this, obviously, you do cover some UFC as well. Are you covering a lot of them as far as
I would not consider
TKO
myself
or
an
no?
expert on UFC, but I know some things about TKO. I don't know.
So what is, as far as TKO, I see the stock prices going up. What is Shapiro talking about with ticket yield and all this other stuff going on with Vince McMahon didn't charge enough money for tickets and we need to charge more? And like, what's going on with him talking about, I guess, to Goldman Sachs, wherever the heck he's talking to?
Yeah, he said, Vince wanted to price tickets for families, but he didn't maximize the opportunity there. So clearly, in his view, with whatever data he has, he thinks that you don't like the ticket prices are so high. He thinks they can go even higher. And to just look at that as a bare economic question, I don't see him being wrong. Do you see attendances for WWE going down?
No,
I don't. The demand has been strong despite already increasing ticket prices. So maybe they can withstand a lot higher price because the demand is sustained, and it's sustained sort of at the pretty close to the capacities of what their venues can hold, right? It's not like they're sustained at like 8,000 when they're running NBA arenas that can hold for a wrestling configuration 13,000. They're sustained at over 10,000. So it's just supply and demand, and maybe he should be more mindful of the rabidness of wrestling aggregators and wrestling news readers who are gonna consume all of that information and put it on Reddit, or maybe they're already calculating for that and it just doesn't matter. Those are just the most hardcore fans. That's the vocal minority that can be dismissed. I don't know.
I don't know if Shapiro realizes this or not. I mean, obviously, he doesn't kind of be sarcastic, but UFC lost money last year. WWE made money, so I don't know. Maybe the way they were going was the right direction, just as far as WWE.
Well,
Maybe but I know there's other factors obviously at play with UFC losing money.
it depends on what you mean. So UFC in adjusted EBITDA terms, what's adjusted EBITDA? The adjusted EBITDA is an imaginary metric made up by, public companies generally do this, right? There is not one profit metric. When you talk about profit, you're talking about a vague thing, right?
Yep.
Maybe what we think of when we think of profit is probably what's really called net income, after not just the expenses get paid for, but your taxes and all this other stuff.
Yep.
Net income, yeah. TKO did not make money last year, or I think maybe they did, but only a little. I'll look maybe while I'm talking here. So I don't know if it's true to say that UFC lost money, but UFC is doing two really heavy things and will be doing it for a long time, which is paying a $375 million antitrust settlement. Plus, the great thing for Endeavor about this merger is that they got to offload this massive debt that they incurred for buying UFC years ago, and they've loaded that onto TKO, which is, WWE alone was very profitable, and it still kind of is, but it's a great way for Endeavor to offload this massive debt that was caught up in Endeavor, which is going through all sorts of financial troubles and had a sort of a disaster going public and has gone back private. They were in part hindered by their large debt related to buying UFC. Now they get to toss that over to this merged company that involves UFC. So they're going to be paying down that debt for a number of years to come. If you wanted to spin this as like an anti-WWE narrative, you could say WWE's not making money. WWE's not a profitable company. It's maybe narrowly profitable, but they're getting weighed down by all this debt from UFC. They're getting weighed down by this massive antitrust settlement that they're having to pay. And Endeavor's just taking them for a ride so they can get rid of their debt and load it on to WWE. That's what's happening here. And there's half truth to that.
Let me hand it over to Lavie, who's chomping at the bit over there too.
Yes, and as if you're watching the visuals, my full disclosure title is that I have WBD stock, and I bought it when it was way down, and my birthday is tomorrow. So if the timing works out right and I make the profit, I'm going to be able to bring a family of 4 to the worst seats at Madison Square Garden to see Monday Night Raw. So
Nice.
fingers crossed on that. But Brandon, one of the things that I understand about your fandom of pro wrestling was the Puriso scene. I'm mispronouncing that, and All Japan. But New Japan and Bushiroad, how much do you have a chance to sort of look at those financials? And it's hard to get a sense of the Japanese market today. Where do things stand? I know that Matt Riddle was kind of negative on his payouts there and what it's like to work in Japan, whereas it used to be like so much more prestigious. Like, what's going on with New Japan in today's worldwide market?
And just real quick, now that I have it up, last year, in the full calendar year of 2024, TKO made a positive net income of $6.4 million.
Nice.
Off of 2.8 billion revenue.
Yeah.
So a little bit off of a lot of revenue. So with Japan, I don't know. We looked at the Bushiroad filings a couple weeks ago. I mean, New Japan is in a dire state. I mean, it's not about to die or anything, but I think it really highlights what a golden era the 2010s, especially the latter half of the 2010s, were for New Japan. And they've lost all their stars. Like, they're gonna lose or have lost all of their stars of that era, right? Okada's gone. Tanahashi's about to retire. Nakamura's been gone for almost 10 years, right?
Yep. Naito left.
Ibushi's gone. Who am I leaving out?
Omega, Ospreay.
Omega's been gone for a long time. Ospreay's gone. I don't watch the product, but I hear people complain about the House of Torture a lot, and how, at least that's the narrative from Western fans, is that this is just bogging down these cards. I mean, the problem probably is the content, and it is the stars, right? I think we can. I feel like I've been doing this long enough now to be like, people always want to do mental gymnastics around, well, maybe they're just not marketing themselves in the right way. Now, if you have a long-term decline like this, it's probably the content, which means it's maybe a lack of star power and the quality of your content, quality of your programming, of your wrestling shows. That's probably what it is. Attendance is down, and it's way down from the peak of 2019, which on one hand, again, it should highlight what a great era that was for New Japan. But also, this is a pretty significant decline. And they're going through some hard times now, and I think Stardom got more of a feature in their disclosures than usual, probably because there's just a more positive, or at least more neutral story to tell about Stardom.
So in your wonderful report, which covered from August 2024 to August 2025, 365 days covering basically any Japanese promotion that had some footprint, even those drawing in the low 100s, that New Japan, in terms of, basically event volume, but of course, average attendance and total attendance, it's by far and away the leader, in that, which it's been, basically since the 80s. Stardom, is basically next in terms of total event attendance. So, Bushiroad is the leader of the industry, and it sounds like things are in the dumps. So is everyone else in the dumps too? Is that just the state of Japanese wrestling?
I don't have a strong enough sense. I don't pretend to know, like, I know what the trajectory of Pro Wrestling Noah and Dragon Gate and All Japan are. They're the secondary promotions, at least on the men's side, behind New Japan. They're there, and they're doing, a fraction of what New Japan is doing in terms of attendance. But I guess the question that I would want to answer is, how does this year-long period compare to the prior year-long period? And I just haven't pulled that data, and I don't have it at my fingertips.
So interestingly, Bushiroad had this presentation, I guess pulled from the financials, that their sports segment, which is really only New Japan, USA, and Stardom now, from what I understand. I'm not sure what happened to their kickboxing thing. So quarterly sales was in yen, millions of yen, 1699, with an operating profit of 105 million yen. So the last 2 quarters were profitable, and mostly, looking at it by 4 quarters at a time, it looks like for the most part they're profitable the last 3 years, 3 of the 4 quarters. As they sum up, New Japan, despite the announcement of a key player's departure, attendance remained steady. For Stardom, the Yokohama Arena set a new record at over 7,500. The restructuring phase since fiscal year 2024, Car 2, has been completed, resulting in a significant improvement in profitability. Interestingly, their future outlook looks like it really relies on Aaron Wolf, the gold medalist, who's set to make his debut. They have Stardom enhancing media presence to boost nationwide popularity. They're focusing on those different shows that are upcoming. They're looking towards the G1 Climax. Interestingly, they prioritized their IPs. So ahead of New Japan on their IP categories are Bang Dream, which I think is like a music band, sort of. It might cross over to anime.
I did Google this. It's like a video game and music brand. Yeah.
I'm going to totally mispronounce the next one because I don't even know what letter that is, but Weeb Schwartz. I'm not sure if that's a Jewish brand. Card Fight Network, Card Fight Vanguard, New Japan's IP is followed by Stardom and Palverse. So interestingly, with New Japan, there's a little star there. Net sales of more than 4 billion yen in fiscal year 2025. So anything, in terms of those visual little descriptions, anything, Brandon, that we should take from that, or that's pretty much been covered?
I don't know what to take from it. I mean, New Japan and Stardom, they put into this sports division, which I do think they're consolidating into one entertainment division to include was it Go Dream or whatever it is. They're slightly profitable still, so it's still a sustainable business. Is what we saw from those slides. Is that there is a quarter where they lost money, but most of the other quarters are in operating profit, which I think is like the equivalent of operating income, right? So I don't know what the tax situation is like in Japan, or if there's if we were to whittle that down to net income. I don't know if there are generally accepted accounting principles in Japan or not. But it's doing okay. It's viable still.
So there was a rebranding of their, I think it used to be USA centric, but now it's a global fan club. Has been given a new look and a new name that reflects the global nature of the fan club more accurately. We hope fans from all over the world will be able to take part in this new community. Along with that, the Wrestle Kingdom announcement, we're happy to announce the fan club ticket presale. Secure your tickets. There's also a Discord now. I feel like people used to make the pilgrimage to the Tokyo Dome, and it was a thing, and everyone would tweet about it, and people had even made books about how to navigate Japan as a wrestling tourist and so on. But that's not so much anymore. I think AEW really, for the most part, sort of satisfied fans' thirst for an alternative, and the alternative of New Japan was just kind of too complicated in terms of platform, and it didn't exactly translate to fans' interest as we transition to talking about pre-COVID pro wrestling challenger market and to today, so about 5.5 years, 6 years ahead. Do you think that the change in New Japan's impact worldwide, especially in North America, could be directly linked to AEW's rise?
Absolutely. I think, they took all their stars. AEW took all of New Japan's stars. New Japan didn't really develop any new ones. That's on New Japan. But they took all their stars, and they took, I think, exactly what you said, Lavie. They took I think the opportunity that was necessary for the AW opportunity was there was the dissatisfaction that WWE had instilled into the fan base for years and years, and a lot of different brands benefited from that, including within WB NXT in certain years, right? Ring of Honor benefited from that. New Japan benefited from that. Remember, New Japan ran American Airlines Arena in Dallas, and filled it. It's unfathomable that they could do that today. And AW took all that energy, and including look at the U.S. Indies. The U.S. Indies are not what they were before 2018. The Indies also had this golden era, I would say. At least the hype Indies that had an internet following had this golden era, and that's gone now. It's that sort of subculture, sub-industry that's diminished. New Japan is diminished. Ring of Honor was literally bought by the Khan family, and all of that energy and all that economic demand is now centralized in AEW, and I would argue has been, now that Vince is gone, has been probably taken up by WB itself too a bit.
So with when they have the collaborative show with New Japan, from what I've read, it seems like it's a sort of more of a rights that AEW sort of pays, maybe like a license to work together, yeah. Whereas it's not, necessarily like a 50-50 split. Have you heard anything about that?
It sounds like that's what it is. I think Tony's been asked something about that in a press conference at one point, probably early in the Forbidden Door time. It sounds like there's a licensing fee. Maybe it's something similar when it's Forbidden Door, it's New Japan gets a fee. Maybe when it's AEW working with New Japan at the Tokyo Dome, it's a fee. That's what I would guess is happening there.
Do you think Tony Khan learned any lessons in acquiring ROH that further informs his thirst, if he has any, for acquiring other promotions like in New Japan?
What would that be? I don't think he's going to buy New Japan.
You don't?
I would be surprised. I mean, what's the point of Ring of Honor existing?
Well, I don't think there's any point. I think I had tweeted that they should take it out and kill it. And people were going crazy on X for a few days because there's really, it's just, it exists as this husk, and it's kind of sad almost to the ECW rebrand, especially when it was like past December to Dismember, and you're just like, this just reminds me of something that I used to love that's still here. And there's no, obviously Tony Khan is doing, not treating it like nothing matters. We know Shad Khan's value is now $14.3 billion in terms of his worth as reported by Forbes, but he does want to make it viable, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to do what needs to be done to go outside of the WBD universe. Deal? Yeah, and he's not taking the offer with the CW has led to this whole NXT thing, and maybe there'll be other promotions that'll be on there, which is interesting. Something nobody talks about is WBD still owns 20% of the CW, 15%, whatever percentage.
Like yeah, I think it's 15.
Yeah, but they have no voting rights. So besides AEW and New Japan, I think if you were to look at these 5.5 years till now, the only brand that's in a better position is TNA. What do you think? Like when you
sort of right? It's, I don't know. I think TNA is probably a great Rorschach test, right? Like you can look at it as, wow, they've gone from having really limited relevance, a show that still only exists on Access TV. Maybe that's about to change soon. I don't know. To sort of accepting their place in the wrestling industry as this tertiary brand that is subservient to WWE, but at least that's giving them a lot more exposure than they've had in a long time, if ever. And I could look at it more cynically and say, well, this is just WWE finding a way to use talent virtually for free, or whatever the nature of their deal is with TNA. It's allowing them to use talent, and maybe the talent gets paid more when they appear, let's say, on NXT. But I don't have to, if I'm WWE, sign, at least not yet, Joe Hendry or Mike Santana to an annual guarantee. I can just use them as part of this deal with whatever that deal entails. So I'm sort of getting extra talent to work for me that's costing me less than it would for me to take those people in house. So, and maybe it's also WWE establishing more plausible deniability against an argument that they're violating antitrust laws, because they can say, wow, we're not anti-competitive. We work with the number 3 company in the United States, and we cooperate with them. We partner with them and give them opportunity. So that's happening. Does that answer your question? I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think it gives us an idea of the market from then to now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your business. As you've shifted, there's been different focuses. Of course, with John Pollock, you have your weekly flow now, but how's the Patreon growing? How's the social media, which you mute most? You don't hear the negative, which is good. Block that out. What's how is WrestleNomics? What are the next steps for growth? Where do you want to go?
I don't know. I think WrestleNomics here. I'll do my best, Mark Shapiro here. We're a growing, mature brand, and we've gone through some churn. Somewhat on Patreon, but there's, I think it has developed into what it is. I don't know, maybe there's some opportunity to grow the website, in terms of there's some ads now on the website, and that's helping. But I look at what I do as journalism. It's a bad word, but I do, and whatever money I make from it is a bonus, but I think I should not be too focused on monetizing. I think that needs to be a clear second priority to getting out useful information that at times challenges companies and people in power, and that should be the priority. So I don't know. I've been more interested in doing what journalism is supposed to do, in terms of getting out standardized facts, which in the form of the data reports that come out with every edition of Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Dynamite, Collision, making records requests to get information about, for example, what WWE and perhaps the AEW's relationships are with local governments, and if they're getting site fees or subsidies and things of that nature. The LVCVA is resisting. It is at least, I would say, stonewalling my effort to get some information about what WWE's relationship is with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority and WrestleMania. So there's a petition in Nevada court about that. And I don't know, I've moved away from trying to be as involved with social media, even though I'm tweeting still, and only doing one podcast now. So less of a podcaster, maybe more of a reporter.
I like the when you have a co-host, and obviously it's a different flavor. It's not WrestleNomics, it's part of the Post network, but it gives that chance to bounce off each other. It seems like there's only so many hours in a day, and allowed you to shift from one thing to another, because each element of what you're doing seemed like a tremendous amount of time, where it's like a standalone 1 hour solo podcast, or there was different types of reports that would come out at different times, which seemed like a tremendous amount of energy. Whereas now you have sort of a more sophisticated system of the ratings that land with the attendance, and sort of it's all there in this way that you say all these tools and whatever, but that you built them.
Yeah, the data reports are really the product of a lot of coding, a lot of automation. that I'm pulling. I'm sorry, Lavie, I don't do the annual report. I didn't do an annual report for whatever for 2024. Because I feel like I don't know. I don't know if this is a full justification. Obviously, it's not the entirety of what an annual report would be, but I feel like those data reports are kind of, I mean, at least in terms of attendance and TV ratings, are giving you um, the annual trends from a pretty well-rounded, point of view in terms of where these programs, how these programs are trending year over year on a monthly, quarterly basis, how each program sits compared to the programs on that network, which should tell you something about what the value that program is to that network, as well as there are charts in there about how these programs are ranking when it comes to those that are still on traditional TV, on a medium basis across television more generally, which should tell you a lot about the value of the media rights, at least in how they're comparing to the rest of the world and how they're trending. So that stuff is there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the previous annual reports, even back in the days in the pay what you want, right, to download it. But final sort of question for me before I turn over to John, in following the CW, the NXT ratings, and all the different CW announcements in terms of sports and so on, like, what does your gut say? Does the CW actually want more pro wrestling? And if it wants more pro wrestling, would they want something that's not WWE?
I don't know. I think if you look at CW's performance, I mean, NXT is by far the top program on CW. It's remarkable, like how sharp the fall off is after, because on Programming Insider, which is our main source for TV ratings these days, the broadcast is grouped together, and ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox are often comparable, but then CW is just way down with any of its other standard fare, which is kind of what I expected. I expect, the big question before it moved to CW was like, is it going to do better or worse or the same as it did on USA Network? And it's doing about the same. And if it did about the same, it's going to blow away everything on CW, and it is. So if it's a W product, even a developmental W product, it's great for CW, and probably great given the value too, which is only $25 million average annual value. Question is, if I don't know, is Impact gonna do? It's not gonna do as well as NXT. I think that's a given. Is it gonna do better than the Penn and Teller show or whatever else is on Wednesday or Thursday nights on CW? I don't know. Like, that is, like, I was pretty confident that NXT would be the number one show on CW, and it is. I don't know what to make of a tertiary, number 3 wrestling brand whose main exposure is through Access TV, which is now in like half the cable homes, which is really a quarter of the homes at this point with the state of cable, and whose exposure beyond that is the rub that it's getting from WWE. I don't know if it's going to perform a lot better than run-of-the-mill CW content.
Thanks. John?
What is the state of the ratings for Max, HBO Max? You hear so many different stories, people saying it's this number, it's that number. Do you have any idea, you have any inkling? Because David Zaslav even said it's only 20% of what you would get on TV at one point. So that would be hot. Wow. So it wouldn't be 500,000 per viewer. Wouldn't even be 250,000.
I believe it's not much, right? If we're talking about what incremental viewership is there for Dynamite and Collision live plus same day, if Nielsen would do what we want it to do and combine the simultaneous streaming viewership into the traditional TV viewership that gets reported through Nielsen and that we get the next day after most programs air, what would that number be? What incremental viewership is happening on top of the TBS and TNT viewership? I think it's not a lot, but it's something. I think, like, what would the bump be? 5%? Maybe 10%? I don't believe it's hundreds of thousands of extra viewers. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. I don't think that's happening. But I could see it being 5 or 10%.
That was crazy. There was 500,000. They're saying, and Meltzer's saying, "Oh, maybe," and then he's adding it up. They're doing over 1 million a week, and I don't know. It seemed like a little bit pie in the sky. You know what I mean? It didn't really seem like that would be legit to what's going on. Even Zaslav, you know, the president, you would think he'd be pumping it up. He's like, yeah, probably 20%, and like you're saying, he probably is pumping it up, saying high 20%.
I don't know. I mean, like, I hope that this is something that that Congress takes up, and there should be congressional hearings to force Nielsen or to organize some sort of maybe we need a government agency that measures television ratings and corrects this issue around the live broadcasts that are happening on streaming that are not being measured. Um, I believe AEW is probably getting a little bit of information, and they don't want to release much information for whatever reason because Nielsen's not measuring it in the way that they're measuring traditional TV, and I think that would allow content providers like AEW to better understand what their value is. But I think they're giving them maybe a little bit of information enough to know that they're not adding hundreds of thousands of viewers. I don't think that's happening. But I think Tony's glad to allow that to be believed because that's good for them to put out into the public a narrative that a lot more people are watching their show.
Remember just a few years ago when New Japan numbers weren't available because they weren't being rated by Nielsen, but Access TV had their own rating system, and they'd be like, they're doing between 200 and 300,000. And Sinclair, you couldn't get an aggregate of their syndicated ratings. And there was word they'd be like, Ring of Honor is probably averaging about 1 million people in syndication. So when you don't get the numbers, it could get a little wild.
Something I've noticed through, I don't know, covering stuff for a few years is like, I think the reason, it's just sort of a natural incentive, right? Like if I'm a private company and I want a positive narrative out there about my company and my company's performance, I'll see who's gonna, put that message out for me. I'll give it to this person, that person, and if they scrutinize it, well, I don't know if I'll give it to that person again. But if the person sort of takes it and doesn't really question it and gets it out there, that's the result I want, and that's the source that I continue to feed information to, and that's useful. Maybe that happens.
I just feel like you kind of wish that they were doing better numbers as far as AEW is concerned, just so it's more comparable to WWE and, it's better for the industry as a whole and more fans and this and that. But I feel like that max number, it just seemed like, I don't know about that. You know what I mean? Like just seemed high, very high.
Seems high. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And what was the rating this past week for Dynamite? Just regular. What was it, 584?
That sounds right. I'll look. I think it was 584 after a record low the week before.
Right.
But it sort of suggests that record low was an anomaly. A 584 coming off of 472, which is, I believe, the lowest non-preemption ever. Was the week before, both in the demo and total viewership. That was September 3rd was the lowest non-preemption Dynamite ever. Of course, we're comparing all these to times where there wasn't a simulcast, so maybe that would change things if we knew what the incremental viewership was on streaming.
What do you think is going on? Do you think it's just that there's only 40 whatever percent of people have cable right now, and that's it? Do you think AEW's in a downswing, even though everyone keeps saying they're in an upswing? Like, what's going on?
I think they're still ranking fairly well. The nature of traditional TV is that it's in attrition. It's going to be in attrition for who knows how, maybe forever, until it just gets subsumed into some other, I don't know, system or everybody's just on streaming. This is kind of what I would expect. The ranking is doing okay. Look at the WrestleNomics report and look at how they're ranking over time. The ranking improved a little bit recently, and it's stable. And that tells you the most about their media rights value. The TV ratings, I think that the TV ratings narrative that Tony could push as far as Q1 doing better than Q4 and Q1 being the quarter where streaming started, and maybe that continued into Q2. I think that narrative is disintegrating into Q3 here. But this is This is what it is, and this is what I would expect. This product that is now a distant number two to continue to do, especially if we're just looking at the older media that's continuing to decline.
And WWE, I mean, obviously with their attendance and everything else going on is crazy. I just can't believe that they would do WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. That just seems like
No, you can't believe it.
it just seems nuts, right? Right?
What wouldn't you do for $100 million?
I don't know. That would, to me, I'd be like, it's the biggest show of the year. But I guess, I mean, the money talks with TKO.
It's no. I listened to Paul Levesque on Pat McAfee's show on Tuesday, and he said they didn't mention the money at all. So they didn't mention the money at all. So that tells you that the money doesn't really matter to them, and it's all about being part of the change. Part of the change I learned is that really you could go all the way back to 2018. They are being part of the change, and that's really all it's about for WWE is helping the country's the government's image, and just you can't. He said you can't expect things to change while just being on the sidelines. So you can say what you want about human rights and things like that, but this is they're being part of the change. They're doing a good thing, and there was no discussion whatsoever about the $50 million per year that they get directly from the government, regardless of how many people actually go to the show, regardless of what the ticket sales are, and how that's double the biggest pro wrestling gates of all time.
Pat McAfee didn't just say, what do we care about Saudi Arabia for, other than money? He didn't mention that part.
He didn't really challenge his boss on any of that.
Interesting, though, that I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, I guess maybe it's just so obvious you don't mention it, but I just have like it's just weird to me being a longtime fan. You know what I mean? I've been around since WrestleMania 1 here, longer than that. But really,
you're not the customers. We're not the customers of pro wrestling anymore. The customers are sponsors. Things like Cricket Wireless and Slim Jim. Things like Netflix and Warner Brothers Discovery and CW and NBC Universal Reversant, and Riyadh Season, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, the New Jersey Sports and Exhibition Authority. Those are the real customers, and the product that they're selling is the wrestling shows, but it's also you. You get to pay for being a product also, which is a great position for TKO to be in.
I was wondering if Tony would ever do this, but completely go opposite, and not necessarily make your tickets cheap or anything, but just keep mentioning how a family of four can go to AEW, and like, wouldn't you do that if you're a Tony, or is that like almost like, is that comes off as begging or desperate? But I would do it. I'd be like, hey, a family of four, you can afford us. You know what I mean? And like Banana Bowl always does it. Like, we're not going to raise our prices. Sure, you can get it on the secondary market for $300, but they're priced $60 again, for a ticket or whatever, whatever it is. Should AEW do that and say, hey, a family of four can go for this amount, or whatever if the case may be?
The secondary market does present a challenge there. We're like, if you don't price your tickets to demand, secondary market will do it, and they'll take the profit and not you. But all that being said, that's one issue in a bundle, which I think is WWE is if you're AEW, WWE is providing you now with an opportunity to solve one of your key problems, which is your lack of identity. It's hard to distinguish, I think, especially for that alienated fan of 2019. It's harder for that fan to distinguish what's the appeal of AEW. What's it going to give me that WWE is not going to give me? Especially since, in a lot of people's opinion, WWE has corrected a lot of its creative problems now that Vince is gone. So what do I need AEW for? WWE is now satisfying this disgruntled urge that I had in 2019. But here's WWE saying, by God, we have shareholders, and we have to make the most money for our shareholders. Shareholders are giving us money, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to give them the best possible return, give them capital returns, dividends, stock buybacks, and we have to raise these prices as high as we can feasibly make them so that we can give them the best possible return. This is an opportunity for AEW to distinguish its identity as a more fan-friendly product, to say maybe something to that effect, that, you know, we're the company that puts fans first. How's the truth to that? I don't know. They still have major deals
Right.
with media partnerships that are far outweighing their consumer revenues. But nonetheless, it's still a message that you can plausibly put out there, especially if you're a private company that's not beholden to shareholder interests, to say that we are the fan-friendly product, rather than leaning on Tony's subjective refrain of this is the best wrestlers, the greatest shows, the greatest pay-per-views, the greatest events, blah, blah, blah. No, this is a real tangible differentiation that you can make, an argument that you can make to fans. Now, you don't want to go out there and you know, start cutting promos on WWE, especially if you're Tony Khan. That has not worked. There's plenty of evidence to show that. But what you can do is indirectly show that, you know, and message that we are fan friendly. We put fans first. This is our ticket prices. We're going to put fans first in X, Y, and Z ways. They've got more resources to put together a better message than I can in 2 minutes here. But I think that is, you know, you look at what they're doing with sponsors all over the place, which I don't really view as that big of a deal, but it is jarring to some people. And AEW's not doing it. I think if AEW could sell that space, they would, but they're not doing it. And that can all be part of a message about how we're not doing those things that annoy you or that price you out.
Isn't that crazy though? Like the guy, Mark Shapiro or whatever, TKO, can almost come off more heelish than Vince. Be like, well, Vince didn't charge enough for tickets. Vince was too family oriented. Like, you know, it's almost like, wow, the big heel, Vince, you're actually kind of trying to turn him into a babyface. Like, what is going on with these comments? That's just what it comes off to me as.
Right. Because we're fans. We're just
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
piddly consumers.
Yeah.
But his goal disregards fans, right? And he's not, like I said earlier, he's not speaking to fans. Perhaps he should be more mindful that fans are going to find those comments. But the important thing to them is profitability, you know, is cash, and greed is good. And if you're looking for fan friendliness or, by God, ethics, the only ethic that a publicly traded company has, and that most major corporations have, is the interests of the people who own the company. And that's it. And they're going to do business with governments that have terrible human rights records if those governments with terrible human rights records will pay them handsomely to overlook that, and in fact to hide that.
I go to WWE shows. My son loves WWE, so we'll go, right? But obviously, ticket prices are crazy. I went to AEW last week, and I saw Dean 3 afterwards, Action Wrestling, too. I obviously was there for that, too. For my buddy Phil Schneider, the long-time close personal friend, Phil. So was that there? But to me, I was like, man, I kind of, my son didn't want to go to AEW, so I just ended up going and you know, met or trying to meet up with Phil, and it just random seeing different people there. But I was thinking, man, I wish he would like AEW because it's so inexpensive. I went to that show so cheaply versus for SummerSlam and MSG that I went to, which was like literally probably 4, maybe 5 times ticket price. So in my head, I'm like, damn, I wish we could get more into AEW in this household just because it's more fan friendly for me, ticket wise, money wise, financially.
Yeah, for sure. If you want to watch WWE, better get a Peacock subscription or Netflix subscription. Or, oh, by the way, get ready to pay $30 if you're not on one of the select cable operators that might get it as part of the package. And if you are, expect to pay more when your cable operator renews their carriage fees and hands the customer the cost of those fees. Is pay-per-view dead? I don't know, Mark Shapiro. Pay-per-view might be kind of in a way alive. You might have just renewed it here with this amazing ESPN Unlimited deal.
If you're smart out there, by the way, I don't know if everybody has Disney Plus and Hulu, but get the bundle and you get ESPN a lot cheaper. And they actually gave me a bit of a discount because I've been with Disney Plus since the beginning. So that's the way I had to go about it. My buddy, he got it for free. Whatever through ESPN, he gets it for free. I'm like, oh, lucky bastard. So, you know, I was kind of forced into getting this triple bundle. But still, now I'm like, have to overthink everything instead of just turn it on the TV. And I'm like, oh, what channel is it on? Where am I watching it? It's everywhere. It's too much.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that Shapiro's even acknowledged with sports, right? I mean, to take the NFL, for example. I believe he said something like, I have to do too much homework to figure out where the game is. And you do. And I think that is another
Yeah.
differentiation point that AEW can make versus WWE, where WWE is on all, if you're in the United States, WWE is on all these different networks versus if you're AEW, I mean, if you're just a streamer and not a cable subscriber, well, it's all on Max. 100% of it is actually on Max now, right?
Yep.
But
A lot easier.
I mean, the cable media industry has been so weird. I don't know that it had to go through all these growing pains that it went through. Like, I think what we're seeing now is the result of younger people rationally not wanting to subscribe to cable because they decided, like people in my age group, I'm exactly this kind of person. Like, I moved out of my parents' house and I never subscribed to traditional cable. I do have YouTube TV now, but the idea of like paying a ton of money when I wasn't watching the things that were on those networks, and just the rigidity of that customer experience. I mean, anybody who's grew up in a cable household has probably had the experience of listening to their parent be on the phone and put on hold and put through the rigmarole on the phone with the cable company, right? And
Yeah.
it just sounds like it's a horrible customer experience. Um, so we all decided that we're not going to be a part of that, and Netflix got that opportunity, and everybody, Netflix, the W Network, they all entered this game, rationally enough, by way underpricing the value of this product to get everybody on board for this amazing deal, $9.99 or whatever it was, and then gradually we have to raise these prices so that this can get up to profitability. You're already accustomed to subscribing to this every month and not canceling it, and all these old media companies got into the game and probably got into the game too late and not aggressively enough. What we're seeing now is this sort of renegotiation with the cable cutter, with the cord cutter and the cord neverer to, you wanted to avoid cable. Well, we've got you in piecemeal. We've got you in all these little segments back into it, and the price increases. The price increase beatings will continue until morale improves.
Well said, Brandon. Love it. Well said. Let's wrap this bad boy up, Lavie. Let's head towards the plug. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie? And then we'll head over to Brandon and we'll get all of his plugs.
Yeah, so in lieu of plugs today, I am going to hold up my Diet Coke and give a toast to both of you. First, John, for being the rock. 250 episodes, actually 251 when we had the surprise Insane Clown Posse run in. 13 episodes of Trump Mania. You made it happen. And Brandon, the inspiration, thank you for joining us here, bringing us on your show, going on John's show. When we added it all up, it's near the top. So thank you both. Looking forward to celebrating again in episode 500.
Thank you very much, Lavie. Thanks to you both for having me on again. I always enjoy these conversations where I am freewheeling and free-flowing here.
And where can everybody find you, Brandon?
WrestleNomics.com, you will find the links to everything. You can join in on the harassment at x.com/Brandon Thurston. All over social media and stuff like that. If you would like to support my work, patreon.com/WrestleNomics. It's the same exact content is also on Substack now as well. WrestleNomics.com. WrestleNomics.substack.com.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there. Episode 250 in the books. We'll see you next week right here on Business